Okay, so first of all, I just want to start with acknowledgement of the country in the spirit of reconciliation. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and the connections to land, sea, and community. And I pay my respect to the elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people today. My name is Tito Ambio. I am on the board of Inside Indonesia, and I am a journalism lecturer at RMIT, and this is our second launch, I think, for the edition. And yeah, the goal is for the contributors to have conversation with each other, and a bit of a way for the editor to also just think about what are the ideas that people can expect when they engage with the articles. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog, by the way. This is his switching hour. And one of the things that surprised me as I was reading the articles is that educational partnerships between Australia and Indonesia have actually been flourishing in some sense. And a lot of this thanks to work done by people like all of you, with IEP, with the New Colombo Plan and all this stuff. And the number of Australian students who are engaging with Indonesia in the last 2 years, there have been, I don't know whether they've increased in the last 2 years or not, but there have been activities, very important activities happening. People are engaging, connecting. And this is something that I've learned a lot from just reading the articles. But let's go to Ellie first. So Ellie, as the editor, together with Ratih, why did you want to do this edition, first of all?
Yeah, thanks, Tito. And I should say, so yes, I was co-editing this edition with Ratih Indraswari, who is unfortunately teaching at the moment, but she will be popping into the call later on as well, so we can share some insights together. But look, this really came about back in 2019. I was having a chat with Gemma Purdy back in Melbourne. And what we were really seeing at the time, I think, has since been very well documented by scholars like Lee Tran, who's with us on the call tonight, and others as well, around this rise in international education and learning abroad in particular. So we were really starting to see by 2019 this absolute boom between Australia, Indonesia student mobility. And as you mentioned, Tito, a lot of this was also because of the New Colombo Plan. So this is the Australian government's signature undergraduate scholarship for Australians to travel out to the Indo-Pacific region. And since 2014, when that launched, Indonesia has been a major destination, a top 5 destination. So the numbers pre-pandemic that we were seeing were around 2,000 students to Indonesia just in 2019 alone. And you had something around over 5,500 NCP, New Colombo Plan grants that had actually been given out for Australians to travel to Indonesia in those 5 years alone, between 2014 to 19. And on the other hand, we had started to see, there's this continued growth of Indonesian students studying in Australia as well. So through programs like the Australia Awards, of course, but also through private study and at the secondary level as well, and also in TAFE and other programs too. So there you're seeing significant numbers, around about 22,000 students. So prior to the pandemic, Gemma and I were sitting in Melbourne talking about this again. This is a boom. This is a moment in time. I mean, Australia and Indonesia have always had long, educational linkages, and this is certainly something that Sylvie and Ratih talk about a lot in their piece in this edition. But when you think about the sort of history of around 70 years or so of educational partnerships between Australia and Indonesia, it felt to me at the time in 2019 that this was a real moment. There was a significant mass, there was a significant number that we were starting to see Australians really getting out and getting to Indonesia to get to know Indonesians, and Indonesians coming to Australia in significant numbers, that we were really seeing a reciprocity. Obviously it's not the same scale and it's not the same numbers, but there was for the first time a significant reciprocity, which I don't think we had seen previously. So yeah, it really came about at that point. And then of course, COVID happened. So we had to rethink the entire thing. We thought, oh my goodness, we've had all these numbers, and now all of a sudden student mobility has essentially just been cut. And, I think we can all admit that at the time, the beginning of 2020, and when the pandemic began, it was very, it was daunting for a lot of us in international education. Many of us were considering what happens next, what happens for learning abroad, how are we going to continue, not just with undergraduate student mobility programs, but also with things like the Australia-Indonesia Youth Exchange Program, or IEP, which we'll talk about a bit later on, but also for research programs and for teaching programs and collaborative learning, which I know Natalie and Zainab will talk about a little bit later on as well. So there was a lot of hesitation and uncertainty in the sector throughout the beginning of the pandemic, March, April last year. And that continued, I think, for several months until round about August, I think, was the real game changer when we saw DFAT give the green light for mobility projects. So this was New Colombo Plan projects, for example, that already had funding to go ahead. And they said that obviously while there was still an international travel ban in place, this could actually go ahead if they could be pivoted to a form of online delivery. So given that the New Colombo Plan had the green light, this also was a green light for other mobility programs, such as the Australia-Indonesia Youth Exchange Program and other modalities, which I'll let our contributors talk about today. But yes, in terms of where it all sort of began, it was a kind of pre-COVID project. And then it became a let's now reflect on how we've actually managed to do this through the pandemic, because certainly what we have seen is that student mobility hasn't died. It has changed shape significantly, for sure, but it's going to be with us for a little while in this virtual format, particularly while these international borders remain closed. So what we've seen instead is an incredibly agile and I think innovative response, and our contributors really go into detail, I think, about that in this edition.
Now, I have a lot of questions for Ellie, but I'm aware that Lee, you have to leave at 6:30. So let's go to Lee, because you're an expert in international education. You can give us a bigger picture on where this conversation, what the context of this conversation. But what I'm really interested in hearing from you first is this idea of internationalization at home. What is this idea and how has it been viewed or managed in Australia and maybe even in Indonesia as well, or the place of Indonesia in the way Australia thinks about this idea of internationalization at home?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tito and Ali. And first of all, it's really my pleasure to contribute to this special edition. So in the past, I used to contribute to collection in international education or learning abroad or internationalization at home, but it's not specific to any country except for Vietnam. So I feel really privileged to have the opportunity to contribute to this. And I have been amazed by reading the articles contributed by my fellow colleagues in this edition in terms of the diverse perspective, the innovative practices, and as well as the level of expertise and quality of the submission. So it's really wonderful to be part of this. And yeah, certainly prior to COVID-19, international education was geared toward education abroad, including the recruitment of international students who travel across miles and ocean to study in host country, as well as study abroad, where local students have study exchange, short-term mobility or long-term mobility in the Indo-Pacific or other countries, as well as the other activities, including transnational research collaboration, traveling for conferences, and the provision of offshore education. But with COVID-19 and the challenging context that Ali just outlined, international education has shifted the focus from education abroad to education at home or internationalization at home. And it's really interesting to see how people have turned challenges into opportunity in order to enrich teaching and learning for both international and domestic students, and engage students in not only disciplinary and subject content learning, but also developing technological expertise or virtual literacy in a way that could be helpful for their participation in the workforce, given the context that we are in. And it's also interesting to see how academics have been working with course enhancement coordinators and students from diverse backgrounds in order to internationalize the teaching and learning in online and blended learning. And in the past, we often talk about the benefit of students who have the opportunity to travel abroad in order to be immersed into the learning across context. And now we have seen how people capitalize on the virtual mobility and international collaborative in learning environment in order to give students the opportunity to expose to another culture, a workplace in another culture and in the host country through the virtual environment, virtual reality. So it's really interesting, and it also there is a connection between internationalization at home and the issue of climate change and environment protection as well. So the issues of environmental sustainability associated with internationalization at home.
Ellie and I had a chat yesterday, not yesterday, a few days ago, and we were joking about how whenever there's anything to do with Indonesia, like a panel or something, it always feels like a reunion because, the people who come are always the same people, But, one of the questions that you listed is relevant to this because this might open up possibilities for people who might not be in the past, maybe only people who could afford to travel would be interested in, going to Indonesia, going to Vietnam. But what do you think this will open up? Opportunities for people who might be, from marginalized backgrounds, might not have even thought about Indonesia in the past, to be involved with this kind of exchanges?
Yeah, certainly. We have seen that internationalization of education has been more inclusive since COVID-19. In the past, it is often the case that students who know the benefit of learning abroad and how important it is to their employability and employment prospect will often actively exercise agency and take up the opportunities. So with the new Colombo plan, the government has been implementing a number of strategies in order to make it inclusive of students from diverse background, from refugee background, indigenous students from low social and economic backgrounds. Still, there's a lot of barriers, and students with disability, students from low social economic background who have part-time job in order to afford their study and their life are often hesitant in being away from their job for a couple of weeks or months to travel to another country. So with virtual mobility and internationalization at home via virtual mobility, those students with disability, for instance, and students who struggle to keep their part-time job are given the opportunity to be mobile at home and to be exposed to cross-cultural experience and the learning environment from another country or the virtual workplace in order to enhance their professional capability and their work experience through virtual mobility. So certainly it is an area that seems to be promising, but there need to be a lot need to be done in order to research and map out what the good practice examples are in terms of supporting those disadvantaged and underrepresented students in virtual mobility.
Thank you very much, Lee. And if people want to know a little bit more, there's the article on Inside Indonesia, and I know that you have to leave quite soon. So yeah, thank you very much for taking the time in your must be very busy schedule these days. So thank you, Lee.
Thank you so much.
Now that we've heard from Lee about the context of doing this virtual mobility stuff and the importance of it and how it opens up opportunities, what we can do next is look at how it has been practiced by some of the contributors. So maybe if we can hear next, what do you think, Ali? Should we go to Natalie and Ibu Zainab next?
I'd love to go to Natalie and Zainab. Thank you.
Yep. See ya.
If we can hear from both of you, so maybe, I don't know, who wants to start first?
We've already planned this,
Yep.
which is a key learning. Zainab and I did a lot of planning for our online course, so that's an example of it in action. As you said, it does feel a bit like a reunion, so it's lovely to see Ellie again, and Zainab, who I think I'm having withdrawal symptoms from. We haven't spoken in like 2 weeks. And also Liam Prince, who, hi Liam, we did a Chichis together in, well, the year 2000. So that was a long time ago, and look at us now. So hi everyone, thanks so much for inviting me and Zainab as well to participate in the launch of this Inside Indonesia special edition on student e-mobility. It's a great privilege to be here, and I'm really happy to see you all. So I would like to just first mention that I'm calling you from Gadigal land, and I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging who have cared for these lands and waters. Yeah, thank you, Ellie, and thank you, Rati, who I haven't met, for inviting us in your capacity as editors to contribute to this special edition. And also Tito, it's nice to meet you, and thanks for having Zainab and me contribute. So I'm the curriculum coordinator at the Sydney Southeast Asia Centre at the University of Sydney, and kind of central to my role is taking field schools to Southeast Asia. Usually they're funded through the New Colombo Plan, but we sometimes have SEAC funded field schools as well, because the New Colombo Plan is specifically for undergraduates. So if we want to include postgraduates, we will fund it ourselves. But most of the time it is the New Colombo Plan funding that we use to run these mobility programs to Southeast Asia. And in those figures that you were citing earlier, Ellie, you know, we have taken quite a number of field schools to Indonesia in the past few years, including a 3-year program on women's empowerment in Indonesia, one that looked at traditional medicine, and we also did some really great field schools on disability and social inclusion. And we've also welcomed participants from Indonesia through the Australia Rewards leadership training, people from disabled people's organisations in Indonesia, and also people from women's organisations in Indonesia. So there has been this constant exchange between, you know, SEAC and Australia and Indonesia, and with COVID we've really been missing that, and particularly that sort of life-changing moment when you see just one student light up and realise that Southeast Asia or Indonesia is where they want to be and what they want to do and what they want to find out about. And you know, if there's one of those students on my mobility programs, I'm really thrilled. So what I'm going to do tonight is just talk a little bit about the article and about the program that the article focuses on. And I couldn't do this without my colleague Zainab Tahir, who is here calling us from Jakarta. And Zainab is the Assistant Coordinator for Shipwrecks, the Shipwrecks Management Unit in the Directorate for Marine Services at Indonesia's Ministry for Marine Affairs. Before we launched this program, Zainab and I had only met once in person. I think that's right, Zainab. There's one photo testifying to our meeting. But this program that we embarked on earlier this year really gave us an opportunity to consolidate our relationship, I suppose, which has been one of the wonderful things about the program. So the program itself was an online short course, which ran earlier this year, as I mentioned, and the focus of the course was on collaborative approaches to capacity building in maritime archaeology and underwater cultural heritage. So basically that means we wanted to look at shipwrecks in Indonesia, and we wanted to do it together. So it was supported by the Australian government through the Australia-Indonesia Institute. We got a grant from them, which was really terrific and enabled us to run the course. So Ellie, I think you're on that AII board, so thank you as well. So the genesis for the course came from our work on another DFAT funded project, a maritime capacity building initiative, which was focused on this Australian shipwreck in Indonesian waters. So it sank in 1942, was a World War II, a victim of World War II. 353 men died on that wreck, and it remains in Bunton Bay to this day, almost 80 years later. So we've done a lot of work on this HMAS Perth wreck together through the Maritime Capacity Building Initiative, but that had really focused on like government stakeholders, So we wanted to engage more closely with the next generation of maritime archaeologists and heritage practitioners in Indonesia. So we wanted to do that by working directly with students. So for the program, we had students from, we tried not to be too Java-centric. Of course, we had Universitas Indonesia in Jakarta. We had Universitas Gadjah Mada in Yogyakarta. They've got a lot of archaeological expertise. We had Hasanuddin University in Makassar. We also had Untirta, which is possibly a university you haven't heard of, but it's located in Banten, in Serang, which is the reason we chose that, and it was Zainab's suggestion, is so we could engage students who are located close to this HMAS post-shipwreck. And we also had one student from Jambi. So we actually had representation from 5 different universities, and we had, I think, 16 students altogether. So it was nice and small. We had guest speakers from Australia and Indonesia. And importantly, one of the ways that we spent the grant money was having translation, simultaneous translation the whole time. And that was important because it meant that language was not a barrier to participation. It meant the Indonesian students didn't have to speak English to participate, and it meant I could invite Australian speakers who couldn't speak Indonesian, and they could still share their expertise even if they couldn't speak Bahasa Indonesia. One of the sort of key things that we did was put the students in groups, and it's kind of a SEAC thing to make students work together in groups. Usually we get them to work across disciplines, but these were all history and archaeology and education students. So the way we got diversity in those groups was to have students from different universities. So there were 3 or 4 universities represented in every group. And we got them to work together to design a research question and do like a mini research project. And in the final session of the course, they had to present their research projects to us. And Zainab, you will agree, the research presentations were mind-blowing. I took notes and like kept references of all their citations because they were so good. And there's some ideas in there, some of the presentations that we're hoping to take further as well. So it was really exciting to see them working together on these tricky projects, but also meeting new students from across Indonesia. So, you know, that was one of the key pieces of feedback from the students, because we did a post-survey, that one of the things they loved most about the course was meeting students from different universities. And we really tried to emphasize to them that, you know, next time they get the opportunity to visit Makassar or Serang or Jambi, they have this sort of immediate network that they can reach out to and who they have met online and work together with. We talked a little bit about inclusivity. We were just referring to inclusivity earlier, and I just wanted to mention some of the sort of considerations that we made to attend to these issues. In recruitment, for example, we specifically said that we were keen to welcome students who had caring responsibilities, for example, if they had special needs in participating in the classes. We attended to gender considerations when we were selecting participants, and also in terms of scheduling, because they are students and probably busy Monday to Friday with classes. We scheduled the short course on Saturday afternoons, and we did so that they slotted as best we could outside Islamic prayer times. So that meant a few late nights for me in Sydney, a few Saturday nights at university, but it was a really great time in Indonesia for learning. So that meant that everybody could sort of participate without having to worry about various things. And we also kept it to 2-hour slots. So they were nice and short. We tried to keep it to 2-hour slots. Sometimes we ran a bit over time, didn't we, Zainab? I think I just wanted to remark briefly on the benefits and then hand over to Zainab, who's going to talk a little bit more about benefits for the students. But in addition to these benefits for the students, I also saw benefits for the partners. So the point for me was that Zainab and I had the opportunity to build on a pre-existing collaboration and also work more closely with the Australian National Maritime Museum here in Sydney, and really give us a chance to consolidate those relationships. And, you know, it was a fantastic experience, speaking personally for me to work with Zainab. It also had benefits for the bilateral relationship, I think, you know, in terms of the Australia-Indonesia bilateral relationship. Maritime cooperation is a key pillar in the comprehensive strategic partnership between Indonesia and Australia. It's pillar number 4. That's been reinforced in the last week by our Prime Minister with the defence meetings, that maritime cooperation is a priority. So really great to see heritage considered as part of this maritime cooperation, not just, you know, security, for example, maritime security. Who's going to talk about the site visits that we did as part of the online course, and also the benefits for Indonesian students. And I think you might also talk briefly about HMAS Perth. Depends how much time we've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. So I consider myself the newbie here inside Indonesia. Thank you for bringing me here to meet Pak Tito and LA and others and other contributors. You can call me Pak. What is I can say that kayak tidak update about this, agak kudet related to the Inside Indonesia, even though I'm Australian graduate. I guess because I'm not really doing education related. It is more about a government thing. So no wonder when Natalie said the Inside Indonesia, we can Inside Indonesia agree to what we say to put the course in as part of the edition. Thank you for that. And it is, I can't say that it is pleasure. It is an honor for us at the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries to be part of the course development and facilitating the field trip, for sure, for the participants. Natalie already talked about the detail of the course and the recruitment and the participants and how Australian government support the program and the variety of the participants itself. And I want to highlight that in general the significance value for us at the ministry, that the significance value of the heritage actually not only because of containing story about maritime past, but also heritage. We found that heritage is a media to connect us and to strengthen our relationship through, we call this our shared heritage between Australia and Indonesia. And it happens with HMS Perth 1. We think that what Indonesia can do, what Australia can do, and by this idea, we need to think together how this important remains connecting us and how to engage more people, particularly young generations, to think mindfully, respectfully about and involve on underwater cultural heritage management. We couldn't stay still by looking what has happened in the field. Maybe I can say honestly that about lootings and illegal activities damaging the historic sites. So then when HMS Perth stated as a conservation zone, as a protected zone, we need to sit together. I mean, when I said we, it is Indonesia and Australia. We need to sit together to talk that what we can do after the designation of the designation of the site as a conservation zone. Conservation zone is a status. It's a legal. We give them a. I mean, we provide a legal binding status, but for sure, a long and the biggest challenge, the biggest challenges after the status, for sure, is about management. How to engage people, how to make people aware of the existence of the heritage itself, particularly for us in Indonesia. Let's say in Banten, how many people know about the wreck? How many people in the government know about wreck, about the shipwrecks? And for the government itself, for the local government as a manager, as a site manager, how aware the young generation about the existence of the significant heritage in their area. That's why when we plan the course, we come up here with a suggestion to give a priority to the students from Banten, by hoping that more people or more young generations engage, means that we have more voices about protection of the heritage itself. And we hope them as an agent. We hope them as an agent. We create the agent for the heritage agent between for our shared heritage. So 6 people, Natalie, right? From Untirta. Untirta is a university, Universitas Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa. When you get it, Untirta. So and what quite interesting for me, the composition of the participants. Not all participants archaeologists from archaeology background. So Untirta has a history department, and the way they learn, the way they see historic remains are different. If archaeology, mostly archaeology students see the objects, from the object itself, but not from what historic documents. So when we come up with the idea to bring the students, the participants for field trip, and then we choose the storage, the artifact storage, underwater artifact storage, to bring the students from Untirta. Actually, I think I have what we say in English, ragu-ragu.
You weren't sure.
I doubt it. Yeah. Yes. I'm not sure they can get the idea. They can get the idea, but I was totally wrong. The students get excited with the experience, the way they see artifacts, and the way they see artifacts, and the way they connect artifacts and the community, and the past community, the users of the artifacts itself, and how these artifacts, how the artifacts can tell us about the trading network, the past trading network between continents, not just communities, but continents, and how they have seen their role. The students' role for the future, as their future role as a historian, to write down a narrative about objects to enlighten communities that we are dealing with our history, our identity, that we need to deliver to public. So we hope that by visiting the storage, they can gain insights. They can gain insight about. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I have to say, Zainab is telling this story about the site visits, and the students really had the most remarkable time. But I have to, of course, tell you that I was in Australia and couldn't participate in the site visits. And this shipwreck artifact warehouse in Cileungsi in Jakarta is very difficult to get access to. So I watched with green eyes as the photos came through of the students holding all the objects. It really was remarkable to be able to tack on an in-person site visit to the online learning course.
No,
I don't want to take up any more of your time. I think Zainab and I could talk about this all night, so maybe you can come back to us.
No, it sounds fantastic, and yeah, I agree with Ellie that the heritage agents. I think it's a great idea that we should create more of these agents in Indonesia. But yeah, no, I think your presentations, both of you, Zainab and Natalie, really shows us the challenges, but also the opportunities that are given to us, and especially people who might not have thought about doing anything to do with Australia in the past were given the opportunity to do this in Banten. But next, I want to go to Sylvie to ask you about your article, Sylvie, that you wrote with Rati, because one of the things that I found interesting is there's more and more of this offerings, I think, that we are seeing, which are mostly short-term programs like what Natalie and Zainab has explained to us. So do you think that is the future of what we are going to do in terms of online education between Australia and Indonesia?
Would you like me to say yes?
No, I would like you to say no, actually, because yes. I'm not teaching short-term programs.
I'm glad you say that. So yes, it's another reunion. Ellie, how are you? Liam, how are you? Nice to see everyone, new friends, and Tito. Our small reunion after how many years? I don't know. Last time we met in Melbourne in Radio Australia. Yes, I was an announcer with him.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, glad that you asked that question, Tito. So it means that we still connect with each other. I have 2 points to make, actually. The first one is this condition of pandemic actually give new meanings or understanding to what we have understood as initiatives for internationalization so far. My view and Rati's view are basically from an institutional point of view, because Rati was working in our international office, and I'm now the head of the Office for International Affairs and Cooperation in our university, Universitas Katolik Parahyangan. So we see it from the point of view of an institution who has been involved for many years with Australia, whether we study in Australia or we work with Achichis. We miss Achichis students a lot, Liam. We are really looking forward to see them again. But yeah, it gives new meaning. So, I mean, like, we have been saying internationalization at home for a while. And one of our program, International Student Conference, is one of our initiatives even before the pandemic. And that time, if I'm not mistaken, that was intended for those who haven't got the opportunity to go abroad. But now it seems like it's for everyone. So that's one example of how the internationalization at home has shifted the understanding. The COVID has shifted the understanding for the internationalization at home. That leads me to the second point, which is we need to see internationalization nowadays in layers and segments. I think many are trying to cope with the condition by conducting short programs, but it has not been successful for all. I could say that. I think one of the formula to do that is to find a really specific topic for the activities, like what Zainab and Natalie was explaining. But if you go for something general, if you are in the WhatsApp group of the International Office for Indonesian universities, you will see posters for programs for Indonesian cultural activities, and it becomes repetitive. And I don't know how long it can be sold. I mean, like, you can always access them in YouTube. I don't know how much it can be repeated, but I think the challenge now is to find the most specific and segmented topic for the short courses that people might be interested in. And the positive thing is you don't really know, you can't really predict what interests people nowadays. Topics which might be, you know, like skipped by people in the past can be really interesting nowadays. So it's time for new initiatives to bloom, to flourish, and I really think that it's an opportunity. However, in the article, we also see the future as, I mean, people might say that the new phase of internationalization is digital or virtual. I have to disagree with that because I think people are still longing for the sensation of, you know, grabbing your passport, going to the airport and everything. And policy-wise, our government is also supporting this. Last night, we just sent off our one of our students to Edinburgh. If you are familiar with the Merdeka Belajar Kampus Merdeka initiative from our Mas Menteri, he's been sending students abroad. There are 400 something Indonesian students already abroad now, and we have more coming, and the programs are going to happen next year and the next year. So the physical mobility is still a choice. So I think I can use the example of cafes and hotels in Bandung as a similar condition with the internationalization. Some might shift, some might change their faces, some might die, but new ones might also grow. So that's what's happening now. I mean, like, people might say that it's economic crisis nowadays, but we can still see new restaurants, new cafes with new concepts. I think Tito understands this very much. I mean, like, you know, coming up with new concepts. So those are my 2 points, that we need to see internationalization in layers, in segments, and that requires different treatments, different responses, tailor-made initiatives. That's what we are suggesting. So it's a combination of both.
Thank you, Sylvia. And next I want to go to you, Kate, because, you know, it's fine for us old academics to be talking about all this stuff, but you were on the receiving end of this, doing IEP all online. Can you tell us what that was like?
Of course, yeah. Firstly, I'd just like to briefly acknowledge and pay my respects to the people located this evening, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and that this land was, is, and always will be Aboriginal land. I would also like to acknowledge mine and Berta's appreciation for our fellow contributors, and to Elle for the opportunity to be part of this publication. It was a wonderful experience, and definitely reflecting on the last 2 years, many young people have felt that we've had to pause, or that we have even lost these enriching opportunities that we thought we would have as youth. You know, really key transition periods, in-person learning at university, inductions to the workplace, going overseas, studying abroad, intrepid travel, and all that broadening horizon that we thought we would have. So there is a sense that youth have missed out at the moment, and there's a great deal of loss from the pandemic beyond the obvious. So for me, IEP in 2020 was the most elevating part of my year, and it's a real gift that all these programs are still being put on, because we're really craving it at the moment. So thank you for making these experiences happen. About IEP, more specifically, it was turning 39 in 2020, which is far older than all of us participants are. And that's a really big alum of people that have been part of the program in one way or another. But naturally, 2020 was the first digital iteration of IEP. And so Verda and I sought to kind of capture the moment and the flavour surrounding IEP 2020. It's a unique experience, one that we wouldn't have imagined a few months prior. So we began reflecting on Jokowi's visit at the start of 2020 to Australia and his comments in the Australian Parliament when we were all very naive about what was about to happen, and how warm and, you know, the tone of friendship that they were, as well as his acknowledgement of an Aus-Indo wave that would bolster youth engagement and the energetic strengthening of friendships between Australia and Indonesia, really agreeing with Ellie's comments at the start of the program that there was this sense of critical mass in like the relationship and youth ties with Indonesia. So I guess IEP is at the forefront of, you know, intercultural and international exchange, and has played a big role in that as being one of the first youth-run, not youth-run, but youth exchanges run during COVID. Yeah, the experience was, I guess, a unique one, and definitely interesting to have this intercultural exchange and international exchange, and seeing how it translates to a virtual world that isn't tied to geography. For me and Verda, we both agreed that actually meant that it was very deeply tied to people. So that internationalization at home resonates with me when I reflect on IEP and literally being at home, but being very deeply connected with my counterparts across Australia and Indonesia. So shout out to Fran, I'm not sure if she's still online, but Value Learning put on IEP 2020, and I think they did a really wonderful job in capturing that spirit of curiosity, of exploration and friendship, and deepening intercultural understanding that's really core to IEP and what it means to young people. It took place over 7 weeks, so a far longer term program than some out there, and that took place in late 2020. 18 Indonesians and 18 Australians, dozens of Zoom calls. We almost had a touch point every day. And that would be for a couple of hours, whether that would be a webinar or a conversation. It might have been a cultural event, individual catch-ups with our counterparts, or just social events, as well as then kind of the more formal core parts of the program, which were around an internship with an organisation in the other country, mentorships with established leaders, a business hackathon for businesses and solving the problems that have been created by COVID, the social impact project as well, where we worked on the sustainable development goals in groups. And then, you know, not to mention that throughout this program, we were kind of sharing our lives. So, you know, having that touch point every day meant that people would be cooking dinner, eating dinner during the program. We were all sitting in very distant places in rooms that were alone, but kind of sharing the very mundane day-to-day parts of our lives, which I thought was really special. And I guess that's where the title of the article comes from as well, Local Streets and Living Rooms, and how that might sound dull, but actually it was a very intimate experience created by IEP. And so, yeah, we even shared Christmas and New Year's together and saw through that entire period. And that was really wonderful in terms of exchanging culture. Yeah, the article speaks for itself, I think, and it's had a really enduring impact on our lives. The chats that we have are still really lively, and we're all very excited to be attending and celebrating the wedding of one of our Indonesian counterparts in the next few days. I think it's a really, deeply meaningful experience, and it's happening again in 2021. So it was obviously a great success. I'll leave it there.
Speaking of which, 2021, is there anything that you want to say because I think the application is still open, right?
Yeah, I think we close on the 20th. I know that lots have been coming in, lots of applications have been coming in. We've been running takeovers of all the social media channels, and there's lots of promotion, but there's still some time. So yeah, please sign up if you're interested, or follow us on the journey then for the next cohort that does it.
Beautiful. Well, we're almost running out of time. So thank you very much for everyone. And on behalf of Inside Indonesia, thank you very much for contributing as well. You know, I've always been inspired by reading Inside Indonesia articles since I was in undergrad, and it's amazing to now be able to do this conversation with you. So to end, can I go to Ellie to close?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tito. Thanks so much again to everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll post this on YouTube later as well. So please feel free to share the link with others who might be interested. But look, I would also just like to express my thanks, first of all, to Mas Tito for emceeing tonight. Thank you so much. But once again, to my co-editor, to Mbak Rati, who unfortunately is teaching and can't be with us right now. But I would like to say a special thank you to all of our contributors who have made this issue as rich and diverse as it is, from the experiences shared by Mbak Rati and Mbak Sylvie in your article on the internationalisation in Indonesia for higher education and what that's looked like, particularly internationalisation at home, and the insights you shared from Unpar in Bandung, through to the wonderful Lee Tran, who was able to join us earlier, talking about the New Colombo Plan and learning abroad. And Lee Tran, of course, has just launched the results of her most recent study, the New Colombo Plan project. So I'd encourage you to check out that report that's been launched online just a couple of weeks ago. Then on to Ella Prihatini, who couldn't be with us tonight, unfortunately, who was writing about the journalism professional practicum with Achichis, and it's a wonderful article there reflecting on how Achichis made the pivot to online. Then, of course, Nur Aziza, who also couldn't be with us tonight because she's competing in the 3-minute thesis competition because she's amazing. But to Nur Aziza, who is one of the Australia Award recipients, currently completing her PhD at ANU, just to say thank you for your wonderful contribution as well, Mbak Aziza. Of course, to Natalie and to Zainab, who we heard from earlier, thank you so much for your wonderful contribution on what it was like facilitating learning and teaching during this period as well, and the way you managed to pivot that program online as well. As you said, it was wonderful to be able to have the combination of the face-to-face and also the digital, and to see that work so seamlessly. So thank you so much for your contributions as well. And of course, to Kate Purcell, thank you so much for just discussing your contribution now, which was also in partnership with Verdanica Desta. So thank you to Kate and Verde for sharing the experiences of what was a really unique cohort with IEP online this year. And as you mentioned, that is going online again this year for IEP 2021. So we certainly, there was a lot of trepidation. We weren't sure how it was going to go at the beginning of IEP last year. Fran's raising her eyebrows. But there was a lot of, we didn't know, and to see it go so smoothly and successfully, and the friendships that it generated speaks volumes not only about what is possible through this period, but also through the kinds of amazing young Australians and Indonesians that we're still attracting through these programs, even in an online delivery. So thank you, Kate and Verde, for sharing your contribution as well. I'd also just like to put a shout out and thank you to Gemma, of course, Gemma Purdy, for all of her editorial assistance, and to the wonderful proofreaders and editors behind the scenes in Inside Indonesia, and to Claudia Petrin from AYA, the Australia-Indonesia Youth Association, who did some translation work for us on this edition as well. So thank you for that as well. And of course, to all of the organisations who support and have supported this issue, Achichis, AYA, IEP, Value Learning, New Colombo Plan, DFAT, NILA, I'm going to forget names, Australian Volunteers International, Asia Education Foundation, the Asia Institute at Melbourne Uni, and all of the other shares and promotions that we've had over social media as well. But thank you so much. What we're seeing at the moment is a really unique period in Australia-Indonesia educational exchange. And I think I would agree to a point with Mbak Sylvie to say that I think everybody is keen to get back on a plane and get back to Indonesia and to Australia. But in the meantime, what we are seeing is our sort of workaround and a way of getting to know each other through virtual learning is a really innovative and exciting time as well, in a different way. And I think even once we go back to face-to-face delivery, we're going to be seeing many of these virtual components of programs actually go forward as well. So that's an exciting and innovative space to be in. So on behalf of myself and Rati as editors, I just want to once again say thank you all so much for your contributions, and thank you everybody for watching. So, Tito, terima kasih. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can't read this, but Liam Prince just wrote that now one of the great things about this conversation is that this is what the articles are. What is it again? Showcasing and documenting sources of hope and examples of innovation during a difficult year. And I agree with that. And to continue on Sylvie's story about the cafes in Melbourne, Kate, I can assure you the Melbourne style cafes, the best ones you can find are in Bandung and Jakarta as well. So
that's controversial. Let's not start a war. Jogja.
Okay, Jogja has some really good ones as well. So I hope you can, you will be able to experience that very soon. I mean, you know, hopefully we can also experience Melbourne style cafes in Melbourne very soon. So, but yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, I'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.